Hello, Mike Ackerman here, the self-proclaimed D-Day nerd, especially Omaha Beach nerd, and before we get going, I want to mention that I have started a Patreon. You know, I love doing what I do. Going through historical maps and documents and analyzing photographs, creating maps and historical artwork. It's great, but it does come with a price. Getting access to archives around the world isn't exactly cheap, and I do all this work on my own time, so any bit of support keeps me going and keeps these videos coming. The next one I'm working on focuses on every documented German machine gunner who fought at Omaha Beach. And that one's going to be a doozy because I'm reaching out to all kinds of archives and various individuals for this one. And it's going to feature a number of things that I documented while I was on my Normandy trip, so don't miss it. If you join my Patreon, you'll get updates on current projects as well as download access to HD copies of all of my Omaha Beach maps and digital illustrations of various fortifications, all of which come with detailed legends describing everything. So follow the link in the description to keep this machine moving. I really do appreciate it. I thought I'd do another reaction video, and sorry to say, but this one is not going to be about our favorite boomer lolcow, Dragon Man.
Here's a 1,000-pound bomb that was never unpacked. I have four of them.
No, this time I'm taking a look at a video that caught my attention with this title: Secret World War II History, Minorities in the German Army. And then a thumbnail that says, The Biggest Secret of World War II. Bold statement, I know. So I guess that means anybody in the German army who wasn't German nor white? Well, that's a very interesting subject, and while I wouldn't say it's secret history, since you can research it, it is an interesting aspect of World War II that is not common knowledge. But hey, the video has about 200,000 views, so it is getting some attention. It comes from this YouTube channel called J-Man Time, which I know nothing about other than this description, which reads, This channel is mostly for videos about rare history of countries, military gadgets, military vehicles, and aircraft. Okay, well, sure, that's great. And holy shit, does this guy have a lot of videos. I mean, most of them look pretty basic, I would say, but some are questionable. He definitely likes to focus on the obscure parts of military and war history, but judging from all the video game crap, the stupid anime, and the dog wearing a hat profile pic, I'd say he leans towards that cringe, deviant art, edgelord spectrum, if you know what I mean. In fact, speaking of Patreon, I just went to this guy's Patreon page and, But let's not judge a book by its cover, okay? He has a video that apparently blows the whistle on the biggest secret of World War II. So let's get to it. Apologies, my hair is extra bouncy today. Hopefully that doesn't get too distracting. Secret World War II history. Prepare to be mind blown. Okay, thank you, Hitler. Non-European volunteers in the German Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS. I assume at some point he's going to cover this specific photo here, so I'll hold off commenting on that for now, but ugh, that photo, dude. That photo gets shared online all the time for reasons, I'll just say that. Let's continue. What? Wait. He mentions foreign volunteers in the German Wehrmacht, and then he shows a photo of colonial French soldiers, probably prisoners of war from the Battle of France, posing for a photo with German soldiers. Can you seriously not tell the differences between the uniforms? I mean, those guys are not part of the German army. We're not off to a good start. During World War II, many non-European and non-traditional European volunteers fought in the ranks of the German army, both in the Wehrmacht and in the elite Waffen-SS. But most of their history has been forgotten until now. So here is photographic and video evidence. Okay, well, let's see how much context you provide with said evidence here. And can I just say that I am sick of the word elite being used to describe things like the Waffen-SS? What the hell does that even mean? Like their training was harder or they got more of it than regular army units or something? Nobody carried the title elite during World War II, okay? It is a made-up thing created by authors to make the enemy sound bigger and badder. It has no relevance to actual military units during World War II. The photo shows a young African in a Luftwaffe uniform, German Air Force. My first thought would be that he's a volunteer from a French colony and likely a Flakhelfer. And I don't know the story behind the photo, unfortunately, but if you do, please provide some credible sources in the comments because I would love to know more about it. I can already tell where this is going, though. He's going to try and show us that Nazi Germany wasn't so racist and that notion is the result of propaganda, which is ironic because this whole thing feels like propaganda. Well, the subject is complicated, okay? Let's just say that. And it can't simply be summed up just by showing some African kid in a Luftwaffe uniform with no context at all. But let's keep going and see if he does elaborate on this, because he needs to. Asian volunteers in the Wehrmacht. Japanese, Chinese, very few. I like how we start off with the only Asian ethnicities that Westerners think about.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
And very few, yeah. Great info there, dude. Korean, Indo-Chinese. If the stats are going to be like this for the whole video, I can't take this seriously. One of my pet peeves is throwing out random numbers like this without any credible sources, or any sources whatsoever. You see it all the time. Wehrmacht 352nd Osttruppen Division? What? See, now you're in my wheelhouse because the 352nd Division was one of the German units that fought at Omaha Beach. The 352nd was not an Osttruppen unit. It was just a standard German infantry unit. Volksdeutschen? Japanese or Chinese? Dude, are you serious? Do you know what Volksdeutsche meant? That would be someone who had German lineage, but they themselves were not from Germany. So they had German roots, but they were not born in Germany, or they didn't live in Germany. Now, there was the classification Eren Aria, I think that's how it's said, and that would apply to the Japanese. So is that what you meant? I think what's going on here, though, is that he's falling into a Band of Brothers trap, if you know what I mean. We all know that scene from Band of Brothers where Malarkey happens upon the German who turns out to be an American, and the guy says that he's Volksdeutsche and his family returned to Germany. And I've noticed this has caused a bit of a misconception that Volksdeutsche meant anybody who would fight for Nazi Germany, and that was not the case. Again, to Nazi Germany, the Japanese would have been considered honorary Aryans, not Volksdeutsche, so we're apparently talking about people who served in the German military, not a classification of people, and so far I've seen no evidence of Japanese serving in the German Wehrmacht. 33rd Waffen Grenadier Division der SS Charlemagne, Indo-Chinese. I guess he's referring to Andre Yi. I don't know how you say his name exactly. And he was half French, half Korean, and he was in the 33rd SS Charlemagne Division. From what I know, he was the only member of that division with Asian lineage, though. So listing that, I would say, is a bit of a stretch without specifically mentioning Andre Yi. Korean volunteers. Drafted into the German Wehrmacht, captured in France on D-Day, June 1944. See, if you were a D-Day nerd, you would already be familiar with this photo, and you would know that you can go to the Naval History and Heritage Archives and find this original photo with the original description on the back that says they are from Mongolia. It's easy for some Westerners to look at photos of Asian men in German uniforms and go right to the only Asian ethnicities they know. Just like Hank Hill. But here's the thing. Asians who fought for the Germans were mainly Soviet POWs who volunteered for service in the German Wehrmacht. These were not people from, Far East Asia like Japan or Korea. They were people from like Mongolia and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and Turkey. Most of the time, American documents get these details incorrect and they usually say things like Japanese or, Korean or whatever. But the original document, of this specific photo here says that they are from Mongolia, not Korea. Yep. I saw that one coming. of course he has to bring up the bullshit fairy tale of Kyoungjong. For those who don't know, Kyoungjong was an alleged Korean man who served in the Imperial Japanese Army, the Soviet Red Army, and the German Wehrmacht, and was eventually captured by the Americans in Normandy. This story has not only been floating around the internet for years now, a number of authors have put it in their books, and hell, even a huge budget South Korean war movie was made about it. It's that one movie with the ridiculous over-the-top depiction of D-Day from the German perspective. That's probably what it's most known for in the West. Maybe I should even take a look at it sometime for this channel. I'm sorry to say, but this story is blatant bullshit. No one has ever come forth with any solid information on Kyoungjong. He's only mentioned by a handful of authors, and all of those claims are unsourced. The first mention of this story comes from Stephen Ambrose's 1994 book, D-Day, The Climactic Battle of World War II. The name Kyoungjong is not mentioned in it, but if we go to page 34, Robert Brewer told Stephen Ambrose the following. Lieutenant Robert Brewer of the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division, U.S. Army, captured 4 Asians in Wehrmacht uniforms. No one could speak their language. Eventually it was learned that they were Koreans. How on earth did Koreans end up fighting for Hitler to defend France against Americans? It seems they had been conscripted into the Japanese Army in 1938, Korea was then a Japanese colony, captured by the Red Army in the border battles with Japan in 1939, forced into the Red Army, captured by the Wehrmacht in December 1941 outside Moscow, forced into the German army, and sent to France. First off, he says it seems that. So right there, it sounds like he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Just because he assumed that doesn't make it true. Second, I am very critical of the author Stephen Ambrose. Now, that doesn't mean that everything in this book is BS, but because of his reputation of, being biased, skewing facts, and just making shit up, I'm inclined to dismiss it. Shit. But okay, let's just go with the idea that Brewer did relay this to Stephen Ambrose. Unfortunately, Robert Brewer was not the most reliable source. He once told Stephen Ambrose that he was the one who led the assault on Brecourt Manor, the one that Richard Winters is now famous for, and Winters was very quick to disprove that. But if what he told Ambrose is accurate, then he and his men probably just saw a number of these Asian POWs in Normandy and then concocted this narrative to try to make sense of it. I doubt anybody told him what was going on in person. I doubt any of them were able to talk to him. The name Kyoungjong didn't start appearing until 2004 in a Korean news article when someone had contacted this news station with the name after reading the Brewer quote in Stephen Ambrose's book. No sources were attached, and who knows if this person who gave them the name even exists. In the early 2010s, authors like Steven Zaloga, who I have talked to a number of times, and I respect a lot of his work, started putting the Kyoungjong story in books and adding more and more details to it. Again, with no sources. And then there's this photo. Ever since the 2004 news article, this photo, it's even in, the Steve Zaloga book, has been attached to this story as evidence that this is Kyoungjong. But nothing about this photo alludes to his supposed story. We've already looked at a ton of photos that show men from Central Asia in German uniforms in Normandy. So what makes this photo stand out from the rest? If I disregard the narrative that's associated with this photo, I would say that he's just likely another Asian Turk or Mongol who was probably in one of the Ost battalions around Utah Beach. But just like that one photo of the POWs on the ship, you can go to the National Archives and find this photo along with the original description that was typed on the back. And here's what it says. Jap in Nazi uniform captured. Dismay and loneliness is written on the face of this young Jap, wearing a Nazi uniform and snapped by a Coast Guard combat photographer in a roundup of German prisoners on the beaches of France. The Jap is giving his name and number to an American Army captain. That's the only description attached to this photo. Even the archive card listing doesn't have any additional information. Nothing about a Korean man who was in the Imperial Japanese Army, the Soviet Red Army, and the German Wehrmacht. Just that one thing right there. Now, do I think this description is accurate? No, not at all. But what did I say earlier about Western knowledge of Asian ethnicities?
So, are you Chinese or Japanese?
It's no surprise that some likely podunk American in the 1940s saw this Asian man in the German uniform and immediately associated him with America's big bad enemy, Japan. So in conclusion, there's just not enough evidence to prove that the story of Yang Kyoungjong is fact. The famous photograph is most likely just another man from Central Asia who was in the Red Army, taken prisoner, and then volunteered for German service for one of the Ost battalions in Normandy. We're only 1.5 minutes into this fucking thing, and it's 30 minutes long. Yeah, we're gonna be here for a while. I forgot his first name, but that's a photo of the Japanese General Yamashita when he surrendered in the Philippines in 1945. What the hell does that have to do with Asian volunteers in the German Wehrmacht? Did that accidentally slide in here when you were editing? Okay, those are Hungarian troops. You can tell their uniform is Hungarian. It's not a German tunic, nor a repurposed tunic for German service. And it looks like they're receiving German Iron Cross medals from a German officer. And there's nothing unusual about that. You know, that's because of joint operations. It doesn't mean that they're in the German military. I guess he put this in here because this low-quality image shows a guy who's squinting and he has dark hair. And that must mean he's Asian. Okay, I know that photo. That's a Japanese war correspondent. I forgot his name, but I have seen a lot of photos of him. And you do know that the Germans were not the only ones to use the Stahlhelm, right? Again, those are Hungarian soldiers, not Germans. In fact, if you look at the Japanese correspondent, he's wearing a Hungarian officer tunic that's been tailored to be open collar. A number of photos of this guy do exist that show him with the Royal Hungarian Army. There are some photos that do show him with some German officers too, but that doesn't mean this guy was part of the German army. Again, he's a reporter. He's there to visit the war, to document it in Europe. He's not there to fight in it. Oh, yeah! Yeah, I forgot about this. Man, I should have seen that coming. You can find a number of photos that show Japanese men wearing these German uniforms with the Rising Sun sleeve patch that resembles a foreign volunteer patch. So what's the deal with that? Well, these photos show a small cadre of Japanese doctors and medical students who briefly flew to Europe in 1942 to study medical practices that were going on the Eastern Front. They were given these German uniforms to wear with these Rising Sun sleeve patches, but they were not part of the German military. It was more of like a kind gesture on the Germans' part to make them feel welcome. It's an interesting occurrence for sure, but don't look at these photos and think that there were Japanese volunteer divisions on the Eastern Front performing bonsai charges. Germany never sent troops to Asia, and Japan never sent troops to Europe, so let's stop this Third Reich Bushido crap that I sometimes come across, where they only use these photos online as proof, but with no context. So far, there has been a problem with every photo. Let's hope at some point he uses a correct photo example in this half-hour video. Turkestan Legion. Okay, so good. Now we are getting into actual foreign legions here. For his title card thing, or whatever you want to call it, he used the second pattern Turkestan Legion patch, which is the red and blue shield with the Turkish recurve bow on it. A lot of these photos, though, show guys with the first pattern Turkestan Legion patch. It's the turquoise oval. It's the same Legion, just a different patch. Their collar insignia does look a bit like SS collar tabs, but those are actually ethnic collar tabs. Ethnic color tabs, they're like a dark green color, and they'd be outlined with the specific color of the specific legion. I think for the Turkestan Legion ones, they had blue outlining their tabs. What's really interesting about this photo is that All of these men, with the exception of one, are wearing retailer Dutch tunics, and that would be very common to see amongst these kinds of troops. They're Dutch M1923 wool tunics that have had the collars cut off and replaced with German Feldbluse ones, as well as added hip pockets. Sorry, now I'm just nerding out. I'm glad he's finally using some accurate photos. I just wish he would provide some additional information so we knew a bit more about what we're looking at here. Now that is a very interesting photo, but I'm not so sure that those are troops of the Turkestan Legion, and here's why. The guys with their backs to us have British P-37 web belts on. They are those light-colored belts, you can tell, and they have those buckles on the back. Those are British P-37 belts. Those were largely captured after the Dunkirk evacuation, and you see a lot of them on Georgian volunteers in Normandy. And they also have the Soviet gas mask bags slung over their backs, and that's another thing you see on a lot of Georgian volunteers. Nice. Nice. Really awesome photo here. The patch is difficult to see, but yeah, I would say that is most likely second pattern Turkestan Legion patch. So one guy in this photo is wearing everything German. He has the German tunic, the German shoulder straps, the breast eagle, the Herr Litzen, some, I would say, poorly applied Herr Litzen, but, you see stuff like that in photos of these types of units. The other three are still wearing their ethnic collar tabs, though, and instead of the German breast eagle, they have the Osttruppen diamond swastika. I've heard some people refer to that as the flying swastika, but I don't think it had an official name. That thing was pretty rare to begin with. They didn't use it all that much, but it was meant to differentiate between actual German troops and foreign volunteers because they didn't want them wearing a national German emblem. It wasn't widespread, but sometimes you did see guys with that diamond swastika instead of the German eagle, so that's really cool to see in a photo. Sorry, I'm just nerding out again now. Let's keep this moving. Yeah, here we go. This is what we all came for, right? African volunteers in the Wehrmacht. Part of the Africa Corps? No, I would not agree with that. That gets a bit complicated, but no. Italian, Libya, Eritrea Legion. The Italian colonial troops were not part of the German Wehrmacht, so no. And Free Arabian Legion. Okay. I'm a bit thrown off by that little info card, but this is yet another very interesting and niche part of World War II history. Whoa! The slow-mo zoom, as if this video is changing the course of history. Yeah, so in the Free Arabian Legion, which applied to a lot of Arab volunteers, mostly from Iraq and parts of North Africa, there were some black Africans. Again, most of them were from French colonies who fought in the French army, and once they were captured by the Germans, they were given the option to join the foreign legions of the German Wehrmacht. But wait a minute, weren't the Germans racist? Yes. Yes, they were racist, but at this point of the war, they would take just about anyone who would fight for them. And if you're wondering why these guys would ever want to join something like the German Wehrmacht, well, just like those Soviet POWs, it sounded a lot better than just sitting in a prison camp, and also if you were a soldier, that meant you would get paid. So yes, the Germans did accept some black Africans in their foreign volunteer legions, most notably in the Free Arabian Legion. But don't think that this was a normal thing, or that this meant Nazi Germany wasn't actually racist. Being racist doesn't exactly mean you're just going around killing everyone with a different skin color. Oh my god, dude, really? See, now you're doing some revisionism that I just can't stand. That moment when you realize your teachers lied next to a swastika. Where'd you get this image from? Some faceless teenager on Reddit? This is apparently about racial minorities in the German military, right? Well, just because a French soldier is sitting with some German soldiers does not mean that he is in the German military. Do you seriously not recognize the iconic French kepi hat when you see it? Here's the thing. You can find a number of photos taken during World War II that show German soldiers happily posing with black men from French colonies, just like this photo and then the one that we saw at the beginning. Now, does that mean these men were not racist? No, it actually means they were racist. Most of these young Germans grew up never seeing black people in person. So during the war, once they got to travel the world a bit and go to places where black people were more common, such as France and North Africa, seeing a black person was like a novelty item to them. I don't want to pretend like I know the context of every photograph taken, but most of the time it was not a situation like, hey buddy, let's get a photo together. It was more like, look, it's a black! I want a photo next to it, you know, so... Just because there are photos of German soldiers with black men, that does not mean they were not racist. So, stop this. That's a photo taken in Italy. You can see a lot of the Italian flags amongst the swastika banners. And from what I remember, this is a 1930s rally showing Somali delegates because Italy controlled Somalia at the time. These men have nothing to do with Nazi Germany. They are there because of the Kingdom of Italy. So, I'm starting to notice a pattern here. These Somali delegates, what do they have to do with racial minorities in the German military? Nothing. That's probably the most famous photo of a black man in a German uniform. As you can see on his sleeve, he has the Free Arabian Legion volunteer patch. And like most soldiers of the Free Arabian Legion, he's wearing a German tropical-style uniform, similar to what the Afrika Korps would wear. Now, there are a number of photos that show this specific soldier, where he's wearing this tropical uniform and he's got this big smile on his face. We already saw him in the slideshow, actually. He's the guy who is sitting on that chair with the two smiling Germans next to him. That's the same guy, and he's the guy who's inspecting the Kar 98K in that footage as well. The next image he uses is yet another photo of this guy. I see revisionists online and in some books using these specific photos as proof that black men actually were in the German army, despite the fact that they all just show one guy who happened to be in a foreign volunteer unit. And if you doubt me and think all these photos are of different people, well then look at the details in his uniform in each photo. Not only are they all the same articles, such as the M42 tropical tunic, the sweater underneath, the M40 cap, the puttees with low boots, but they all have the same creases and folds in each photo. They all line up. Don't think I'm racist and think all black people look the same, okay? It is definitely the same guy. According to the limited sources I've been able to find on these photos, they were taken in Greece in 1943, and that makes sense since Greece is where most Free Arabian troops served. The photo of him standing in front of the train shows him with a Russian Kuban Cossack, and I'm not sure if they served in Greece or not. Now, I have been able to find one other photo of this guy. I don't know if he's going to show it in the slideshow or not, but he's standing next to a flag, and his uniform looks very clean and pressed, and he's even wearing a DAK tie. And I've never been able to find more information on this guy, but judging from all these photos where he's looking happy as hell, I'm guessing these are probably produced as some sort of propaganda tool to maybe recruit more French Africans into this legion. He probably was an actual soldier in the Free Arabian Legion, but these photos seem very purposefully done to me, if you know what I mean. So that's just an assumption. If you happen to know more information about this guy and these photos, please provide it in the comments because I would love to know. What the hell? What are we looking at here, dude? I just see German soldiers. What? What? Are you fucking serious, dude? Are you fucking serious? Or is this just a massive troll attempt? You are a special kind of stupid if you think that German soldier, who is obviously white, he just happens to have some shadow around his face, is a black man. Disregarding the fact that this guy is clearly not black, the aforementioned rare black men who would have been in the Wehrmacht would have been in the foreign volunteer units, like the Free Arabian Legion. They wouldn't be mixed in with regular German infantry like these guys, you know. They were still segregated because, again, they were racist. Congratulations, J-Man Time. This is the dumbest thing I have seen in a while, so I can't wait to see what other revisionist crap you got in this video. See, here we go again. That's not a German soldier, okay? That's a French colonial soldier who's captured by German soldiers. Specifically, I think he's a Senegalese tirailleur, but I'm not 100% on that. I am 100% sure that he's not a soldier in the German military, though. I don't see any black men in a German unit. I just see colonial French prisoners of war standing amongst German soldiers. The guy on the right with the rifle slung over his shoulder is a member of the RAD, the Reich Labor Service, and the actual Wehrmacht soldiers in the photo are wearing their Drillick work duty uniforms. So going off that, I'm assuming that these were likely POWs who were being used as some sort of labor service, like digging trenches or something. Definitely not soldiers in a German unit. French. Good God, man. You already showed that photo twice, dude. You've gone over it already. French. That's a very interesting photo, and I've seen that shared online before as an African in a German unit, but if you know what you're looking at, you can actually see that he is an Italian soldier. He's wearing a fez with the long tassel in the back, and he has Italian tropical goggles on his head. He's wearing an Italian cavalry bandolier, and he has an Italian Carcano bayonet right there. He's not an Eritrean, though. He doesn't have any of the common features of East African people, and he's not wearing an Eritrean uniform. He's wearing an Italian greatcoat that's been buttoned all the way up to the top, and if you actually look at his right sleeve, you can see that he's wearing an Italian rank badge that's pointed up in the fashion of Italian colonial troops. So, yet another example of somebody who is not part of a German unit. You've already used this photo, dude. Again, they're French troops. They're not Germans. They're not in the German military. They're French. Okay. So, those are colonial Schutztruppe veterans of World War I. Those are guys who would have served in the German colonies of Africa from the early 1900s to the end of World War I. I forgot their official name, but you can see that they're wearing the German colonial slouch hats with the side up. That's the dead giveaway. And then among them is an Askari veteran, you know, somebody who would have volunteered for the German colonial army back in Africa, probably German East Africa. This photo was likely taken sometime in the 30s at some World War I remembrance event. I mean, everyone in uniform looks fairly old, like in their 40s, 50s, and maybe even 60s. That means that instead of remaining in Africa, this guy migrated to Germany after World War I. So even though he was from a country in Africa, he must have had a lot of German patriotism because he moved to Germany, and then decades later he attended this event with old comrades wearing his old uniform. See another photo of the same guys. Again, does this mean that Germans weren't racist? No. It just means that black people were not automatically done away with in Nazi Germany, like a lot of people would assume. Especially if they happen to be a World War I veteran who served the German Empire like this guy did. Notice what I keep calling him. A veteran. In these photos, he and his old comrades are wearing party armbands to show their support to the new powers of Germany, but that doesn't mean that these guys are still part of the German military. Super cool and interesting photos for sure, but with context, they don't apply to the notion that black men served in the German Wehrmacht in World War II. Yeah, I see him, J-Man time. You don't need to zoom in. Okay, that's the same smiling soldier of the Free Arabian Legion. We've already talked about that. What the Oh, come on, dude. Really? Really? That photo is way too grainy and blown out for you to say that's proof of a black guy in the German military. His face is like 5 dots. Come on, dude. You're really stretching it now. Same thing here. Just because some guys have their faces in shadow, or they might have some dirt on their faces, that does not mean they are black men, okay? I mean, look at their hands. Their hands are the same tone as everyone else in the photo, and everyone else is clearly white. Alright, here it is. Here it is. Some Africans even served in the elite Waffen-SS, like this man. Hey, J-Man time. If this is a bit clowning on the pea-brain spectrum of World War II history, then it's a damn good one. But if you're not clowning and you're serious, then holy fuck. So let's cover the biggest part of this. Because this photo is dark and high contrast, and the man's face is partially in shadow, and there's dirt. It's been shared all over the internet, contextualized as a black man in the German military during World War II. Even that clickbaiting bastard Mark Felton used this photo in his own video about black men in the German army. But if you actually looked into the background of this photo, you can find another one that shows the same soldier, and it's not all dark and high contrast. And look! He's not black at all! I've covered historical myths and bullshit before, and this one is in the top 10 of myths that just need to die. Stop saying this man is black, he's definitely not black, and that's that. And holy shit, dude, like, some Africans even served in the Waffen-SS, like this man. I can't believe I have to point this out, but you can see right in the middle of the photo the guy's hair Litzen on his collar. It's not even difficult to see. He's absolutely not Waffen-SS. Are you that blind? I guess you are, actually, because apparently you can't tell the difference between French and German uniforms. And no, there is nothing to support your claim that African volunteers fought in the Waffen-SS. That's just more shit you're pulling out of your ass. That and your use of the word elite to describe the Waffen-SS. Please, everybody, stop saying elite to describe military units and branches. It's hyperbolic nonsense. Wow. There's a lot of stuff I hate about this single slide. Let's move on, shall we? Eritrean volunteers, North African campaign, part of the Italian Eritrean army divisions. See, this is another big stretch because the Eritreans fought for the Italians, not the Germans. Many Eritreans fought during the Italian campaign of 1943 for both the Italian and German forces. Incorrect. The Eritrean colonial troops who fought for the Royal Italian Army did so across the Horn of Africa until 1941 when the British captured Eritrea. Eritreans were never under German command. By 1943, there weren't any Eritrean troops of the Italian colonial army anymore. Okay, those guys are camel cavalry of the Italian colonial troops, also called Minorities. It even says so right there in the photo. They're not Eritreans, though. They're more likely Libyans. I don't see a single German rank in these photos, and that's because these are photos from the 30s, way before the German army was involved in North Africa. These are all colonial Italian troops. What is this? I'm just seeing a photo of Luftwaffe pilots in North Africa. I don't see any black guys at all. Okay, so that seems to conclude the segment on African volunteers in the German military. I feel exhausted, dude. I saw a lot more cringy revisionism and just ignorance than actual history for that whole segment. It's hilarious, disappointing, shocking, and frustrating all at the same time. I mean, nearly every photo he used as an example were either photos of Italian colonial troops or French colonial troops. What is the deal with this phenomenon in the past decade or so of black Nazis? This is not the first time I've seen this pop up. I'm not saying there were no African volunteers in the Wehrmacht during World War II. There were. But you can't just pull up photos of black men standing next to German soldiers and say that's proof of it. You can find photos of black men in the Wehrmacht during World War II. I mean, he did show the kid in the Luftwaffe uniform, and he showed many photos of the smiling black guy of the Free Arabian Legion. The other photos that I have been able to find in my own research are also from the Free Arabian Legion, and most notably of a parade of Sonderverband 287 in Tunisia after it was formed in 1942. You see a lot of really interesting stuff in those photos, you know, from the repurposed French uniforms to the World War I era M16 Stahlhelms, but you can see unmistakable black men in these formations. So if he wanted to, he could have used those photos as evidence, rather than using photos mostly of French colonial troops and photos of men who aren't black at all and just coming across as a revisionist dumbass. Indian volunteers in the Wehrmacht. Yes, it was a thing. Let's see, Indian Legion, size 3,000 in Army, so hair, plus 4,000 in the Waffen-SS. Okay, so the Free Indian Legion, also known as the Tiger Legion, was part of the German Heer, but also part of the Waffen-SS, and that's because in the summer of 1944, they transferred to the Waffen-SS. So it's not like there was an army legion of 3,000 and then a Waffen-SS legion of 4,000. They were always between the range of 3,000 to 4,000, and that was when they were in the army and transferred to the Waffen-SS. You know, much like what we covered earlier about Asians being Soviet POWs and Africans being French POWs, the Indian volunteers in the Wehrmacht were British POWs. You gotta remember that, you know, India had been part of the British Empire for about 100 years at this point, so there were tons of Indians in the British military, and tons of them were captured by the Germans in North Africa. I forgot this guy's name. I'll put it up here when I'm editing, but this unit's formation was the result of this anti-British politician who had defected to Nazi Germany. Nice. See, this photo is interesting because you can see the Indian volunteers here. They are sporting the grooming regulations of the German Wehrmacht. They have shaved faces, their hair is cut short, they're wearing field caps. However, the flag bearer is a Sikh. And because he's a Sikh, he's allowed to have a full beard and wear a turban. You see a lot of Sikhs in the Free Indian Legion, so that's really interesting. That's the anti-British politician I was talking about who defected to Nazi Germany. You know, that's a good photo right there, because another thing about these legions like the Free Arabian Legion and the Free Indian Legion is that they were not frontline combat troops. The Free Indian Legion was mainly doing guard duty in France, so I think they did engage the French resistance a little bit once the Allied invasion had happened, but I don't think there was anything else. I get that he's trying to blow people away with this information, like, oh my god, there were Asians and Africans and Indians in the German Wehrmacht. But you really have to understand that the German command did not see these units as equal to their main combat forces. You know, he really blew it with the African volunteer segment, but now he's using actual photos of Indians in the Tiger Legion, so yeah, good job, dude. Middle Eastern and Arab volunteers in the Wehrmacht, and then the Free Arabian Legion patch up there, which we've already talked a bit about. You know, it's funny he puts this in here because that photograph, I've seen that before, that's not of an Arab volunteer. That's a German Luftwaffe paratrooper of the Remke Brigade in North Africa. The Remke Brigade had these unique shoulder patches for each company, and that's what we're seeing on his sleeve. It's not a foreign volunteer patch. And just because this man happens to be a little bit dark, a little bit tan, maybe he's got some whiskers on his face, that does not mean that he's Middle Eastern, okay? Germans can have dark hair too. Made sure to break out the zither, or the kanun music for this portion of the video. Yeah, that's how we know they're Middle Eastern. See, that's that series. That's from that series of photos of Sonderverband 287 on parade in Tunisia after it was formed. Something you'll notice about these photos are the white German officers and sometimes NCOs as well. You know, like every foreign legion, these guys, they wouldn't be 100% foreign. They would still be commanded by German officers. And that's what's going on here. The officers, including the guy holding the flag, are German. You know, the guys in the background, the troops all lined up, those are the foreign volunteers. And see, there we go. There's another photo from the same series. You have right up front on the left a German officer who is sporting the sun and palm patch of Sonderverband 287 and 288. He's not an Arab volunteer, so he's not wearing the Free Arabian patch, but he is a commanding officer in one of these units, and in this case, Sonderverband 287. The two men who are holding up the flag are wearing Luftwaffe tropical uniforms, and that's because these are paratroopers in training for the Fallschirmjäger units of Sonderverband 287. Let's see if he shows some more of them. There we go. That's another photo of paratroopers from 287, you know, all wearing the sun and palm patches that were exclusive to 287 and 288. That's from a small collection of photos taken in 1943. I have the other ones, and if he doesn't show them, I'll make sure to put them up here, because they're pretty cool. Okay, so that's from a different series of photos of Arab volunteers that were also taken in Tunisia in 1943. I don't know if these are troops from Sonderverband 287 or not, but they are not wearing the repurposed French uniforms nor the Luftwaffe uniforms. Instead, they're wearing tropical hair uniforms like what you would see on the Africa Corps. And they all seem to be wearing the Free Arabian patches, and I don't see any of the Sun and Palm patches of 287 and 288, so who knows? They might not even belong to a unit at this point. They might have just formed and they weren't assigned to a unit yet. I'm just nerding out again. Sorry, I know it happens. I'll give credit where credit's due. He has used some proper photos and film footage here of these specific units. I just wish there was some context with all of this rather than just, look at this shit. You know, that's what it is. That's a pretty well-known photo. I've seen that one many times. Those are German officers and NCOs of Sonderverband 288, probably taken in Libya in 1942. And as you can see, these men are all white as can be. You know, they are not from the Middle East. I understand that guys like these were in charge of Arab volunteers, a bit less so in Sonderverband 288, but these are still white Germans. There's that photo again. Not an Arab volunteer. That's a German paratrooper of the Luftwaffe Remke Brigade. It's one of the photos taken in Greece of Arab volunteers in tropical hair uniforms. You can see another white German officer amongst them. It's another photo taken in Greece, probably one of the most well-known photos of an Arab volunteer. Okay. And then just back into straight-up bullshit. Just because you find a photo of an Arab holding a German Mauser rifle does not mean that he's a guy in the German military during World War II. You know, Mauser rifles flourished across the Middle East before and after World War II. I don't know anything about this photo. I've never seen it before, but seeing a photo that was probably taken sometime in the first half of the 20th century that shows an Arab armed with a German Mauser is just as common as seeing a photo taken in the latter half of the 20th century of an Arab holding an AK. Does that make any sense? And let's just be logical here. You know, unlike the Indian Sikhs, the Germans did not allow the Arab volunteers to wear shamags and be out of uniform like that, so bunk. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, let me ask you, do these look like World War II era German troops to you, or World War II era troops in a German unit? No, they don't? Well, that's because these are Yugoslav paratroopers from the 1980s. Yes, that is true. They adopted the Sturmgewehr in the 1950s, and they used it all the way up into the 80s when this photo was taken, and J-Man time, though, he can't help embarrassing himself, so he sees a black and white photo of guys holding STG-44s and instantly thinks that it's a German unit during World War II. And for some reason he thinks that they're Arabs? What's up with that? How do Yugoslav paratroopers in the 1980s look like Arab volunteers in the German Wehrmacht? This is getting weird. This is just getting weird now, man. Do you suffer from short-term memory loss while you're editing? You already showed this footage, dude. Yeah, I see him, J-Man time. I saw him the first time. Okay, so now we're just watching random footage of German artillery and tanks. Is this specifically footage of Arab volunteers? Go ahead and try and find evidence of Arab Panzer divisions, you know, with Tiger II tanks. I guarantee you won't find it. Okay, random Croatian SS poster. Ethnic North African Wehrmacht. So Tunisian, Libyan, Egyptian, Algerian, and Moroccan volunteers, part of the German Africa Corps. Deutsch-Arabische Kommandotruppe. Okay, so that's referring to Sonderverband 288, which is, I guess, why he has the sun and palm patch down there. Vichy French Le Phalange Africaine, and that's the insignia right there in the center, and as stated, part of the Vichy French, not the German Wehrmacht, and then Italian Libya, which, again, is part of the Italian colonial troops, not the German Wehrmacht. A lot of Vichy troops of Phalange Africaine, who were mainly French, Moroccans, and Algerians, did wear a lot of German stuff, like the Stahlhelms with the French flag on the side, but that doesn't mean that they were German troops. Fighting for the Axis powers didn't automatically mean being part of the German military. You don't need to zoom in to blow my mind. I could see him just fine the first time. That's the same photo of the German officers of Sonderverband 288. Just as it was the first time, they're all white. Okay, so those are more Vichy French troops of Phalanx Africaine. And note the French flag painted on the guy's Stahlhelm. Doesn't make them Germans, though. Doesn't make them a German unit. Iranian Legion called Sumka? Okay. That's it. You are absolutely trolling. There's no way. There's just no way that someone would be dumb enough to mistake an Iranian neo-Nazi organization from the 1950s as a German military unit during World War II. I can't believe that someone would be this stupid or have revisionist balls this big. What's going to be next? The American Aryan Brotherhood Legion? Oh wait, no, that can't be because that's white. This is a video about non-whites. The African American Black Nazi Legion or something? I don't know. That's what I'm expecting at this point. I'm not even going to talk about Sumka because, one, I don't know much about it, and two, it had nothing to do with German military units during World War II. So, fuck off with this, dude. I'll watch all the way to the end, but this video is beyond fucked. Shame on you, J-Man time. The Russian Liberation Army. So, are Russians not considered white now? You know, is this a video about non-whites in the German military, or is it about non-Germans in the German military? Because race and nationality are completely different things. I can kind of see why he would throw that in. Russia is very multi-ethnic. We already covered a number of Asian ethnicities who came from Russia. But as a whole, the Russian Liberation Army, or ROA, was largely white. So if I were going to make a video on this specific subject, non-whites in the German military, I would not have listed the ROA, but this was made by a guy who thinks Sumka was a World War II German unit, so... Ukrainian National Army and Ukrainian Liberation Army. I don't know about all those units and those numbers that he listed. I stopped paying attention to those at the beginning of the video. I do know that a lot of Ukraine was very anti-Stalin, though, so the Germans were largely welcomed in Ukraine. They all look as white as me, though. Waffen-SS, Georgian. No, the Georgian Legion did not fall under the Waffen-SS. It fell under the Heer branch, the army. Now, some Georgians might have ended up in some Waffen-SS units, but it certainly wasn't a lot. He might be doing what I said earlier. He might be confusing those ethnic color tabs with SS color tabs. You know, in black and white photos, they kind of look similar, but they are completely different. I mean, the guy, you can see he has a breast eagle on his uniform, which the SS didn't have. They wore those on their sleeves. Also, look at that. They're wearing those British P-37 web belts I mentioned earlier. Super interesting to see that. Waffen-SS, Armenian Legion. Okay, I'm noticing another pattern here. The Armenian Legion wasn't part of the Waffen-SS either. It was part of the Heer. You really need to quell your inner Waffen-SS fanboy, J-Man time. Waffen-SS, Azerbaijani Legion. He's gonna do this with every single one, isn't he? Again, the Azerbaijani Legion, like the other two, not a Waffen-SS unit, okay? These are ethnic collar tabs. They are not SS collar tabs. Not a single SS soldier there. Okay, so now we are getting into actual foreign Waffen-SS units. The Bosnian Muslim Waffen-SS mountain divisions like Handschar and Kama of Croatia. So they're easily identifiable by their fezzes, and they had a unique collar insignia. Oh, I guess he's actually not going to cover the Bosnian SS divisions. I thought he was going to start talking about Handschar and Kama of Croatia, but nope. He just moved on from it after showing some random footage, so alright, whatever. Tatar Legion. So I think you probably should have covered this when you talked about a lot of the Turkish units earlier in your video. Waffen-SS, Caucasian Caucasus Mountain Legion. For the goddamn 100th time, man, they are not Waffen-SS. They were part of the Heer, the German army, not the Waffen-SS. Oh, here we go. Now we're going to cover the SS divisions, the Bosnian Muslim SS divisions of Croatia. You know, I'm sorry to rain on your parade, J-Man time, but the majority of these Croatians were white, so get this out of here. Okay, finally, thankfully, we're wrapping this thing up. Remember, not all Wehrmacht were European, and not all Germans were fascist. Most were just average people sucked into this pointless conflict. Maybe have somebody proofread that before you put it in your video. Mind blown. Oh, believe me, my mind is blown to kingdom come, J-Man time. Just like Hitler's mind when he was in his bunker in 45. Yeah, my mind feels like it just got violated by a bunch of teenage edgelords who think they just got the upper hand on their history teachers after seeing some photos on Reddit. You know, and the fact that you open and close this video with photos of your beloved Führer smiling, very telling. Despite all the problems with this video and the creepy vibes I get from this guy, I do want to believe that he is genuinely trying to shed light on aspects of World War II history that are not talked about really at all. Especially here in the United States where I'm from, people generally do not know anything about the foreign volunteer units of the German Wehrmacht. So I do appreciate that he is trying to shed light on that. But you need to have proper context to fully understand what these units were all about. Unfortunately, he's going about this all wrong. He's trying to rewrite history with this weird mindset that just because there were other races in some of these foreign volunteer units and photos exist of German soldiers smiling with black guys, that means Nazi Germany wasn't so racist after all, and we've all been lied to. I don't know how else to interpret the video. I mean, he's doing these stupid slow-mo zooms on everything, on certain people. He's clearly trying to change your mind, and it's not to inform you, but to really make you think differently. It's like he goes from hating one simplified viewpoint, which is that the German military was all blonde hair and blue eyes, to believing that the German military was actually very diverse and accepting of all races. But both of these viewpoints are false. The bulk of the German military were white ethnic Germans. White men of Western Europe, you know, made up the main fighting forces of the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS. And then, yes, you did have, you know, these foreign volunteer legions made up of all the different types of people that we just talked about. That does not mean that Nazi Germany was not racist. Okay, if it did, then these people would have been allowed to mingle into these other units with ethnic German soldiers. And they didn't do that, okay? They were segregated. They used these people because they had to, and like I've already said, these soldiers, these volunteer units, they were not huge combat forces, okay? They were not viewed as equals. It really does bug me, because people like J-Man Time, they always want to view these topics in this way, you know? They always want it to be super simplified, super simplistic. It always has to be one extreme or the other. Well, the reality is, it's not simple like that. You know, the world is not simple. And because he leaned so hard on this idea that the German military was actually very diverse, he got so many things wrong and just made up a bunch of bullshit. Like, what the hell was that whole section on the African volunteers? It's just all French people, you know? And then Sumka, you know, the Iranian neo-Nazi party from the 1950s. He lists that as a German unit during World War II. If you're not being a troll, and this is for real, J-Man Time, you need some help. You need to get off the neo-Nazi forums, you need to stop watching the World War II furry anime porn, and pick up an actual history book. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this reaction. I hope you actually learned something and did not listen to J-Man Time's lazy propaganda. Let me know what you think in the comments and if I should take a look at some more cringy videos like this. If you want to support what I do and get access to my detailed maps and diagrams, the link to my Patreon is in the description. Like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.